back to the third BBX podcast. BBX stands, of course, for Bold Books and Bones and is primarily a YouTube channel for people who love books. Now, a couple of weeks ago, my good friend Fede from Canada told me about a book called How to Resist Amazon and Why. I was skeptical at first, but then I know that Fede normally has very good advice when it comes to books. And also, I was intrigued by the titles and I wanted to know more about the subject, so I ordered it. I ordered it on Amazon, by the way, because until that point, I thought Amazon was a very convenient way of doing shopping, especially during the pandemic. Now, Bold Books and Bones is a platform that has room for a diversity of thoughts. However, we prefer well-founded information based upon facts or based upon verifiable information. And when I was reading the Zine version of the book, because there's a Zine version and there is a book version of the text, then the author, Caine, did something very nice and very convincing. For almost every statement that he makes, he very clearly mentions his sources. And he does not do that by just putting at the end of the book a list of source material, but he, as you can see here, he uses QR codes to always say, okay, this is my argument and this is where the source comes from. So that is, of course, a very strong way of bringing your argument across. Now, what I also like is that he's not the kind of man who wants to shame people for buying at Amazon, but from what we learned from his book is that he wants to inform people so we can make our own and well-informed decisions. That sounds, of course, fair and reasonable to me. So I'm going to call Fede and Caine, the author of the book, and we're going to ask him some questions. I hope you enjoy the conversation and find it informative. Hi, Fede. Hi, Danny. You're both good?
Yeah. Glad to be here.
Good.
All right. So for the Bold Books and Bones community, so Fede is calling from Montreal in Canada and Danny from Kansas in the US. And I'm in Brussels, the capital of Europe. And what we have in common is that we all love books. Fede, can you maybe tell a bit more about yourself? What do the people need to know about you?
Well, hi, Danny. So happy to have you here in this conversation. So here in Montreal, I'm a communications consultant for various brands. So I help, as a writer, I help brands spread their message as much as possible. And I've been in filmmaking in the past, producing pictures. And also, perhaps more importantly for this conversation, I'm an advocate now for various measures in Montreal to help local businesses and small businesses be more prosperous within prime locations and downtown cores. So I'm very active that way.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then we are very honored that we have Caine, our special guest today. Danny, what do people need to know about you?
Oh, hi. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Caine. I am the owner of the Raven Bookstore in Lawrence, Kansas, which is a small independent bookstore that's been there since 1987. I am also an author of several books, 3 poetry collections, and a small book called How to Resist Amazon and Why, which I'm here to talk about today. So that's me. Happy to be here.
Perfect. Thank you for introducing both of you. Now, Danny, here's how we're going to do the interview. Fede and I, we posted on Instagram and on the Bold Books and Bones YouTube channel the cover of your book. And we told the followers that we would have you as a guest on the Bold Books and Bones podcast. And then we asked them, what would an ignorant and cynical person ask the author of this book? So we used this format also during the BBX podcast with Richard Ovenden, the director of the Bodleian Library in Oxford. And the same disclaimer applies now as then. The people who sent us the questions are all people who love books. Yeah? So the format is only meant to challenge your argumentation and to get the best possible answers. Are you okay with that?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, good. So here we go. The podcast has 3 chapters. One is all about your book and your thoughts and your argumentation. The second part will be about what can independent bookstores do to compete. And the third part is all about the legislation, which is already happening in the world at the moment. And we're going to have a closer look at that as well. But let's start with part one. And if I look at the questions of the ignorant, cynical person, the first question that pops up here is, well, Danny, I like Amazon. It's an efficient way of shopping. It is easy for me as a customer. Why would you want to take that away from us?
It's a good question, and I'm not sure. I don't think the thrust of my argument is that books should be expensive or that service should be slow. I'm not looking to take away any convenience from anybody. I'm more looking for a level playing field. And right now, the prices that Amazon offers and the shipping speed and prices they charge are impossible for anyone else to offer, because they're using predatory business practices, and they're setting this up in a way that is just designed to put their competitors out of business. And so I want to offer convenience and good prices and quick shipping, but Amazon is set up in a way that it makes it impossible for my business to do that too. Their practices in the marketplace are predatory, and they're designed to eliminate their competition. So I'm not trying to take away any customer convenience. I'm not trying to blame anybody for shopping on Amazon. I understand it's a convenient and easy place to shop. I just want lots of people to be able to do that and have a chance in the marketplace. I'm pro competition. I'm pro level playing field, but I'm anti competitive practices, and that's where my critique of Amazon starts.
Okay, well, go to the second question of the ignorant, cynical person, and it's indeed about price. Danny, why would I pay more for a book in an independent bookstore when I get sometimes 10 or up to 40 or 50% discount on Amazon? No customer wants to pay more for a product. Danny, it is just not reasonable what you ask us from us.
Well, my first response is that independent bookstores, I'm not overcharging for books. I'm charging the price of the book. At least here in the United States, a book comes with the price printed on it. So here, this is a book. Actually, I used this to write my book. This is a book called Monopolized by David Dayen. And right here inside the dust jacket, it says $27.99 right there. That's the price I pay. That's the price the publisher sets. I'm charging the actual market value of that book. And that price reflects a fair compensation for the author, the publisher, the cost of production, the cost of materials. That's the price the publisher has set for that book. And Amazon is the one who's modifying prices. And they're modifying prices in a way that they're losing money on books. Often, if you find a book online for 50% off, my discount as a bookseller is 45%. So if you buy a book for 50% off, that means you're paying less than cost on that book, which means it's a loss leader. Amazon is losing money on that book, and they can do it because they have a massive portfolio of other companies and revenue streams, and they can make up for losing money on retail goods with Prime subscriptions, web hosting services, marketplace fees for third-party sellers. They have a massive $1 trillion company that can offset losses in the retail. But like as a bookstore, all I do is sell books. All I want to do is sell books. I should be able to make a living for me and my booksellers by simply selling books. I shouldn't have to have a massive third-party surveillance network as an other revenue stream to help me make money when I'm losing money on retail prices. So like, we're not overcharging for books. We are charging the price of books. And another thing I'll say is, I think a lot of the benefits of an independent bookstore selling new books also come from a used bookstore selling inexpensive books, and they come from a public library. So there are cheap and even free ways to have access to reading. I'm not arguing that you need to have $28 ready to spend to be able to read a brand new book. I'm just saying, I don't think it's fair that the US's largest retailer of books is frequently selling books for below cost, because that has impacts and disruptions throughout the book industry.
Then, if I may ask this question for people who are not familiar with this, are you saying by predatory prices, just to make it clear, that Amazon is currently not making money on its book business? Because people love it, right? It's been a quarter of a century.
Yeah. Well, I don't have access to their reports, and Amazon is definitely opaque in financial information like this. But what I know is when I buy a book from a publisher to stock in my store, I get to keep 45% of that to pay my bills and my booksellers and rent and all that stuff. That's my cut. So if you see a book for 50% off and Amazon is buying it from the publisher for 45% off, that means they're basically handing the customer $5 with that book. So they are losing money, and that's predatory pricing. It's designed to push out competitors. And then once all the competitors are closed, Amazon moves in and raises prices again. They did it with their acquisition of diapers.com in 2011. They wanted to buy the website diapers.com. Diapers.com said no. So Amazon lowered prices on diapers for a couple months, lost a ton of money, but essentially forced diapers.com out of business. And then once diapers.com was gone, Amazon swooped in and raised prices again. And we'll talk about policy later, but that's definitely illegal. And it's a pretty clear version of predatory pricing. And loss leaders, loss leading itself isn't illegal, but loss leading with the intent to put your competitors out of business could be viewed as illegal.
Okay. Thank you very much. So predatory pricing is a new word or new concept that I learned. Very interesting. But there are more questions from the ignorant cynical person, and Fede has more. Fede?
Well, Danny, just first of all, I want to say that the only way I discovered your book was through a tiny little independent bookstore in a neighborhood that it's about to get massively gentrified in Montreal. So the big ones are moving in, everybody's moving in. So I would have never heard of your book without San Henry Bookshop, tiny place. So I love, just from my perspective, I do love independent booksellers. I'm one of those crazy persons that will not buy a book he wants unless I can find it at a bookstore. And call that insanity or what you will. But on the other hand, the cynic will ask, Amazon gives me the library of the world at my fingertips. We have an amazing selection of books. We can get anything we want at any given time. Amazon gives me this. It gives me a fantastic search engine, like a magical algorithm, where it even recommends stuff that I love that I would have never heard of. Is there anything negative in this, Danny?
Well, yes. I would argue that their algorithm can't do anything a human reader can't do. And I think the recommendations from a human working in a bookstore are going to be better and more surprising and better tuned because there's no machine will ever understand human reading like a good human mind. And every independent bookstore is filled with good human minds that can help you with just that, discovering titles you maybe haven't heard of. And then the Amazon search engine, second, I have 3 points with this. So second, the Amazon search engine isn't a pure, it's not a pure discoverability tool because they take money from vendors on their site to boost products. So the search results are more indicative of who's paying to advertise on Amazon than it is of your search itself. And so it's skewed based on the money and the fees they're extracting from the people selling on their website, because you can pay for higher placement, or Amazon can punish someone by sending them to the second page or third page of the search results. And that's not, again, that wouldn't happen if you're talking to a human about looking for a book. And the third thing I'll say is that we have access to all those books too. We can order anything that Amazon has on theirs. If a book is in print, your independent bookstore can special order it for you. So it's and many independent bookstores are selling online. Like our website, ravenbookstore.com, has a search bar too, where you can search any book in print. And I won't say all books, but we can get millions of books into the store, even if we don't have them on our shelves. And that's one of the ways independent bookselling has modernized, is through web sales and kind of increasing our ordering capacity. So, the selection of an independent bookstore is really huge, regardless of what's on their shelves at the moment.
Danny, we lived through a very special time, this incredible pandemic that we just enjoyed and we're still enjoying. Many stores, I bet maybe your store, many booksellers had to close down for long periods of time in many countries. And literally the only way that people had access to books was online. When we speak about the sheer volume of paper books that was sold during the pandemic was record volume worldwide. People ordering paper books, and most of that business, 50%, I think, I don't know, don't quote me on that number, went through Amazon. So the book industry, shouldn't the book industry and writers and authors, this is again coming from a cynic perspective, shouldn't the book industry and the authors be grateful to the fact that Amazon existed during this pandemic and people were able to order so many books so conveniently and so quickly from anywhere in the world?
Well, again, I'll repeat that countless independent bookstores are also able to sell you books online, including my own. So the idea that the only place you can buy books online is Amazon is false. And then second, in terms of how the book industry should feel about Amazon, let's go back to this predatory pricing thing. And if Amazon is engaged in a long-term project to convince customers that books are worth less than their printed cover price, how does the book industry feel about this giant retailer that's constantly working to devalue their product? Yes, this website sells a lot of books, but they're also engaged in a years-long campaign to convince people that we're overcharging by 30 or 40% on our products. That means less money coming into the book industry, less money for editors and booksellers and writers and everybody who works on books. There's a lot of publishers are kind of in a bind because they can't live without Amazon because they do represent so many book sales, especially in the US. But the effect on the book industry in general, I think, is a net negative because Amazon's working so hard to devalue the book. And Amazon even has impacts on how books are designed. The cover images are now being designed so they work best online on Instagram or Amazon. And so I think the publishing industry kind of resents that this company has so much power, but they have no choice than to deal with them because they represent 50% of book sales total in the US and more than 75% of online book sales. I guess the book industry is leery of Amazon because they're working so hard to devalue the book. And there are many places to buy books online. Amazon doesn't want you to think that because they have a monopoly on online book selling, but there are plenty of places to buy books online.
Here's something that comes through the feeds all the time, and I had to experience it myself in my own business. People love to complain when new technologies or new businesses replaced old ones. Like, this goes way back. People complain when the car replaced the horse. People complain when phones came into homes because it replaced face-to-face conversations. I mean, in my own industry, people complain when film was replaced by digital movies. So people are generally scared of change. So again, coming from a cynic, aren't bookstores themselves doomed a little bit like video clubs? I mean, we still love movies, yeah, but nobody wants to get in a car and drive to some place and get a clunky box, a VHS cassette and put it in some machines that we have to rewind and return. So video stores became extinct, right? Because something better came along. From a cynic perspective, Danny, do bookstores still have a place in the future?
Well, yes. And from a technology standpoint, if we're talking about the paper book, the codex form, this thing has been around since the 15th century. It's an amazingly resilient piece of technology. So the book has outlived every piece of technology you just mentioned. And it's showing no sign of slowing down. There was, in the early aughts, there was a big panic about whether ebooks or hypertext or interactive ebooks would replace the paper book. And ebook sales have totally plateaued while book sales continue to rise. So people still like the paper book. So in terms of from a technology standpoint, I think the book is fine. Now, bookstores as a technology is an interesting question. And I kind of have two ways to approach this. One, I would argue that Amazon doesn't actually represent progress. I think Amazon represents a kind of dramatic endpoint of capitalism. It's like capitalism unchained. This is what happens when you take away all the regulations and let capitalism go unchecked. You get a company that's so massive and so powerful. Does that represent progress? I would argue no. I don't think that's making the world a better place. I think it certainly represents the forward march of technology, but whether that's good for the environment, whether that's good for the world, is a different question. And then number two, just from like a bookseller standpoint, even if I was a horse person looking at the automobile, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to let it happen quietly. I'm not going to sit here and quietly, like if I'm a blacksmith, or if I am a typewriter salesperson as the personal computer dawns, even if my industry is doomed, I'm not going to let it quietly happen. So like here I am making noise because I believe in what we do. I believe it should have a place in the future. I'm certainly not going to roll over and let Jeff Bezos just destroy my industry with putting up some resistance.
Okay, fair enough. But what you say about a book being a resilient piece of technology, I think that's something people underestimate this importance.
Yeah,
because we see it now in a digital age that there is some problems with storing this information because of the software is changing along the way, and the hardware is changing along the way. And I think we all know it from home. If you have somewhere a CD-ROM with some pictures of your kids when they were young, you're probably not able anymore to read it, because the formats has changed, and the computer on which you saved them once are not existing. And I remember that the Oxford Library does a research on archiving the web in the UK. They can do that by law. They're asked to do that, and they check like every 3 years, if I remember well, how many links are still active. And it is amazing that 40% of the links are not retraceable anymore after 3 years. So there is a knowledge created, and maybe the link still exists, but it has changed name, or there is what they call bit rot, where links just don't work anymore. So it has a major implication. While if you take a 16th century or 12th century manuscript, you don't need electricity to operate it. You just open it and you start to read, and the information is still accessible. So that is in itself a very, very big topic. So I'm happy that you mentioned it. Thank you for listening to part 1 of the BBX podcast called Resist Amazon ? Danny Caine interviewed by the Ignorant Cynical person. Hope to welcome you soon to part 2 of the BBX podcast, where we ask our special guest Danny Caine what independent bookstores can do to compete with Amazon. Please stay curious and stay free, and see you in part 2 of the BBX podcast.